started sitting as back to the web development department right after I graduated.
Okay. That's also, I kind of want to ask you about questions, not like, what was I going to say? Like the moment where you decided like you were going to be in technology is where you want to be.
Okay, I think that's a great question. We could definitely talk about that.
I'll probably ask that after I ask you the question about, like, talking about yourself. And then, and then talking about also like the different avenues at some point, we should talk about, like, when you learn to code, like, there's so many different jobs. You know, like project management, and then you can also like self-reliance other things, like other jobs in technology. And I think a lot of times we get so focused on like this one subject and don't realize that one subject also like lends itself really well to other positions.
Yeah.
Because not every student's going to go on to do just development.
Just. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that for sure.
Because you have experience in that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even things like marketing are being more technology based and code based.
Like I just have to know HTML. Like if you're a marketer, you just need to know.
And a lot of the marketing tools now for a website are JavaScript based.
Totally.
Right? And so as a marketer, knowing JavaScript is a huge advantage.
Well, it's like there's no such thing as too much education. Like knowing something that you know.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's get more questions. Oh man, I was like, you know something. Let's hope I do well. I think you'll do great.
I think you've got the harder job. You've got to steer the conversation and rein me in.
You know what's so funny? I was thinking about that, like, it'll be fine. Like, I don't even need to do this. And then I was thinking about it, like, no, like, I lead the whole thing. Like, I'm hard. I have to do a good job. I'm Guy Raz. This is hard.
Yeah, it's a good experience.
I'm gonna rate a Martha. What's terrifying is?
What's that? I didn't watch that movie.
No, Guy Raz did Martha.
Oh,
but Martha
he
did great, but Martha didn't understand like why we were asking certain kinds of questions. She didn't get it. I feel like we made it like I'm on trial. Because she didn't realize that we didn't want to know her like elevator pitch of who she is. We wanted to know the guts and stuff. Like we all know who you are, Martha. Like you're an icon to all of us in the entrepreneur space. We want to know like the dirty secrets. And she was like pretty reluctant. Until like the last like 15 minutes, and then she was like great.
What do you think? Doesn't sound that good.
Doesn't sound that good?
There's like so much. I'll just check my cough. Do you hear this? I think this is picking up too much sound. It's like picking up like my.
Hey!
Oh, hi, friend.
How's it going?
Good.
Don't be sexy.
Yeah, dude. Gotta support your. So should it be on the lapel?
What's that?
Should it be
Basic training.
Should we just pick one?
Yeah. Let me. We'll trying both.
Okay.
You know, choosing one or the other.
Fireside chat, Blake.
Right.
Don't tease it. It's wonderful. I thought of it myself.
Did you still want to do that piece where I'm just like flexing my muscles for the camera?
Yeah, I want to do that.
The shirtless. We doing that too?
Yeah.
I didn't see it on the agenda.
Someone's
Is it?
streaking.
We need to add that. And the streaking.
Oh.
I have my mom watch this, so streaking's totally in. That's totally not.
Hey.
Does this planter look okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Live stream?
Live stream.
Audio input.
I'm gonna be honest, everything you're gonna talk about is gonna be way over.
Get it?
Whatever, I'm in.
Basically, we're going to be talking about puppies and unicorns.
Great.
So we're down with that.
Yeah.
I was eating today.
You went to that dinner, right? Yeah, you did.
One on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a elevator pitches. Yeah.
Do you mind trying this on yourself and talking? I'm just testing the audio right now. just like have a casual conversation with your room. And yeah, it's just like 30 seconds delayed, so I'll get your feed in a second.
Alright. So being recorded, so I need to make sure
Oh, okay, yeah, keep it PG
nothing,
13.
nothing inappropriate comes out because it's all on record now and being captured by the NSA. How you doing with that? I'm trying to handle it. Done? You a student here? I am. Cool. Mac. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Alan. Good.
Yeah, you were in some group or? Okay, cool. I'm from London, so.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I live out in the far west, so right there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just gonna hear a bunch of names, see if you get them. Hey, that's Ski that's somebody's talking about in business. It's a six. So.
Oh,
We thought everybody would complain about it before you guys.
And that might
Yeah, that's great.
building things. You and I have always talked about like building things is fun. Like I feel like that's like if I had to write your autobiography, I would say that.
We should put this behind the chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we can talk about basketball. That red light will bother someone, I bet. Okay, I screenshot it. I forget things I say. Nobody talks about it.
Oh, we were talking about.
I do remember actually. Looks actually your chair. So it's like, okay, now bring the sentence in. Yeah.
Talking?
Yeah, saying something short or fast.
The brown fox jumped over the. I can't remember the rest of the saying.
She sells seashells.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Pickled peppers. Harry picked a. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of other things to say. He wants me to talk.
I wrote up a really good intro on you and I can't find it.
Oh no. Is that the one you sent to me? Or is it different than the one you sent to me?
I did say.
Because it's in that same Slack channel. You still want me to talk? I'm good. This sounds good. Goodish.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit difficult. I think once everyone stops like talking, just you guys dialoguing, I think then it'll be easier to pick up. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just picking up a lot of sounds right now.
Okay. Well,
Gotcha.
that's
Okay.
that.
Just hope for the best.
If you need us to talk louder to just like
Okay, I'll just
make some secret symbol. Thumbs up over.
I don't want to thanks for coming. So, a couple things. We want to make the reason we're doing this event is a few reasons. The major reason is so you guys have some interaction with people that are already in the industry and that you could potentially be working for or similar to, and just so you really understand like what. Because I guess we all make up ideas in our head of like what it's going to be like, and the experience is completely different, or it's like less scary, or maybe harder, whichever. Either way, so Blake's here to help shed some light on what it's like from a senior dev and hiring, what his career looks like, where he's been, how it relates to what you guys are doing, and how you guys can move forward with this. This is Blake Beus. He is Director of Technology of Summit Series, which is an events company that hosts global events around the world. Most of their events are happening at the Powder Mountain in Elgin, and he networked that whole mountain at one point. That was quite the feat.
Yes.
He's made multiple websites from scratch, CRMs from scratch. He was one of the lead developers at American First Credit Union. So when they built their new websites, they're going to do using America First. You know how like it used to be like kind of shitty, and then it got better. He was part of that team. So yeah, so he's got about 15 years experience behind him, 10 years of a career, and so he's going to chat with us. And I'm going to ask him questions. For about the first 30 minutes, I'm going to talk. He and I are going to talk, and then the last 30 to 40, you guys are open for whatever questions you want to ask. Like nothing's off limits. Like strange questions, great questions. I mean, there's a little bit, but like some discretion. Tech focus, all the questions. Yeah, so we're going to get started. Oh yeah, it's a very tech thing to do. Okay. Let's see, we got the back row. We're good. So, this is going to be like weird for a second, like very Oprah, and then it will be fun.
Then it will be fun.
So I just introduced you. Will you tell us more about who you are from yourself instead of me telling people?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I kind of got my start in technology in high school. I built a website. It was like 1997. Wasn't that great, but I built it, and I really was always interested in technology and things. I broke a couple of my parents' computers. They weren't super happy about that, but when I got to college, it was kind of a natural fit for me to go into something technology based. I really liked it, and but yeah, in college I built as a senior project. I built another website to help the school with something. I can't even remember what it was. It probably wasn't even that great, but I built it again, and it got out there. Yeah, and then just my history. So I've been actively in a developer technology type role for at least 10 years, and it's been a kind of a roller coaster. Lots of different areas to tackle in technology. It's been fun.
What was in your first dev job, what was the hardest thing that you did? Like when you were first starting?
When I first started, I worked for a company as an online sales rep. I took phone calls all day long, and then I moved back into their web development and design department. And so making that transition from a sales mindset to a development and technology mindset was kind of complicated, but the most difficult thing about that was really learning their systems. Every company kind of has their own systems, and I think luckily nowadays we're starting to see more uniformity with different frameworks that are getting big, and so there's kind of a common foundation. But back then it was very wild west, and learning that was a challenge, definitely, but you learn it, you figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
From then to now, what in the industry has really changed that you feel like is like significant, especially for students that are learning JavaScript full stack? Is that you just said it was universal, like things are coming together? Is that still happening, or is it?
Yeah, that's a huge change. So when I first started, we had big problems with cross-browser compatibility support. So every browser did things differently, especially Internet Explorer 6, which was awful. And so we would have to sometimes build completely separate code bases for different browsers. That's much more uniform now. One thing I'm really excited about is there's a new version of JavaScript out, ES6, which again unifies a lot of other things that were kind of inconsistent in previous versions of JavaScript. So those things are all happening. We're getting more standardization, and it's pretty exciting.
Are you guys using that now?
A little bit.
A little bit? Okay, so you're ahead of this guy? Who will probably be higher
You might
than
be.
you? So our students are learning React right now,
Yeah.
and you
I haven't touched React.
haven't touched it.
No, there's always new things. That's one of the things I really love about this area of technology is there's always something new to learn. I love learning new things, but there are certain things I haven't had a chance to look into. So React is one of those things. So everyone in here that knows React knows more about React than I do, but I'm actually in the process of learning it, and it's going to take some time. I don't have an immediate need for it right now at my current role, but it's something that I really want to get behind. It's pretty cool.
Now that you know that these students are learning it, do you feel like a little bit of like if they're learning it, I need to learn it?
A little bit, yeah.
Kind of like.
Yeah, and there's this thing, imposter syndrome. If anybody's heard of it, it's really easy to feel like I don't know much when there's all these other people that know lots of things. But the truth is everybody knows something someone else doesn't know, and that's why we collaborate and work together. That's what web dev teams or development teams are. There's always different skill sets and things in there, and cross training is really key and important in those areas.
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that we teach our students is that we teach them like how to learn. Did you learn that at any point, or did you have to self-teach?
I had to self-teach. Learning how to learn is one of the best skills you can have, and it's frankly one of the things that I look for whenever I'm interviewing someone, if they can learn how to learn, because you're constantly faced with something you've never done before, never had to do before. But if you know how to learn and have good foundation of just solid principles, you can pick it up.
Let's talk about. I want to get back to all of that stuff, but I think they have probably a lot more questions on that than I do, and they're probably they're better to ask those than me. But right now you're working on a project for Summit Series.
Yes.
DTLA, global event, Borderline TED Talks Festival.
Yes.
You're basically commanding all of the digital work for that, from websites, ticketing. Like that's a huge project, and you've had 8 months to do it.
Basically.
Yeah. How do you do that? Like from a dev team situation? Because I'm sure there's gonna be other projects that students are gonna end up in with like that. Like how do you do it?
So it's really just about coordination and organization and prioritization. Big projects and big things don't happen all at once. There's a lot of iterative and small steps to get there. And so we use various different ways to collaborate and prioritize, but there's if you just follow a process of getting these small chunks done, I tend to try to sit down at my computer every day and think of 2 to 3 things that if I could just get done today, that'd be great. And it doesn't seem like it's enough, but by the end, with everyone else kind of doing the same things, you can pull off something pretty incredible and pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, this covers things from communication during the event, the mobile app for the event, networking, Wi-Fi needs, things like that for the event. There's a lot of areas
10,000
there.
people want to tweet how much fun they're having, and if they can't tweet it, they're gonna be upset.
Yeah, it's a
With
challenge.
you, they're gonna be upset with tech, right?
Yeah,
That sucks.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, that reminds me of the ship last year. We had networking problems
We did.
on the cruise ship that event we did last year. And it's something we had to work through, but we did all of the steps that we could to make everything work and kind of handled it from there.
So you said you take the processes and use those steps, and you don't just work with the dev team. You're working with the designers, UX guys, the sales teams for the ticketing, the operations. How do you manage, those relationships and making sure all of their needs are met as a developer? Because they might ask for something. I've done this to you before in the past. I'm like, hey, we need this great product, and you're like, okay, but we can't have it tomorrow. It's going to take a month to build. How do you mitigate those expectations?
Sure. Yeah, a large part of what I do now is setting realistic expectations, and helping educate and train different people that have different capacities on kind of what it takes, and that's honestly one of the things I like doing. I like kind of teaching people and walking them through the steps of what it takes. The other thing is good documentation, making sure that we're using some sort of system to manage all of the requests that are coming in, and then we can prioritize those. I can delegate those out to my team or take some of those tasks myself, and then we work through those. Another key point is to work to get executive support behind different things and get their input on what the team wants from a strategic level, the business wants from a strategic level, and what's most important, and use that information to set priorities of which tasks and things you do next.
Yeah, no, that's a huge one, right? Because all of us have like these really great ideas of what we want, but like, does the technology exist? Do we have, what are our limitations? And like, who? Like,
Yeah.
and dev teams are like handed these things down, you know, from here, make this. Like
Yeah.
that's difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of communication that needs to happen. I think successful dev teams and technology teams are those that really communicate, maybe even over communicate with the other departments and teams of a company, because it's really vital to getting all of the things done.
So Slack forever.
Slack, sometimes.
So most of our communication in class is over Slack,
Yeah.
and then your communication's mostly over Slack.
Uh-huh. But I have to take that and put it into something else,
Sure.
so that I can actually walk them through the process.
Yeah.
Some sort of
Documents.
Kanban system or something like that.
I like that you said it appropriately. Kanban.
I usually don't.
It's Japanese. What as far as like, so you hire teams. Most of these students are going to go off. Some of them are going to go back to the careers they have. Some of them start new careers. Some of them are just building the skills they already have. As far as being a hiring manager, what do you look for when you're hiring somebody that's new to coding, that's new to development, new to being on a tech team, new to working in this environment? Like is there a mentorship program that goes into that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of different companies do it differently. For me, I always try to choose and really focus on people that have a base level of understanding of the technology. Maybe not, clearly not an expert level if we're hiring someone that's fresh out of, college or a boot camp or something like that. The other thing is enthusiasm and willingness to take things on. Usually, every hiring manager knows you're going to be given tasks that you've never done before, and if the candidate can be quick in learning, quick to figure things out, have the drive to continue to learn new things, and be excited about it, that's really what I look for. Secondarily to that is I want to make sure that they're a fun person to be around. We spend a lot of time together, and I like to make jokes and have fun, and everybody does at their employment. So got to have a fun personality, and
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I didn't know what I was going to say.
Okay, great. Well, because we're teaching hard skills,
Uh-huh.
right? Like how to code, but like the soft skills sound like they're super important.
They are.
Working in a team, listening skills, all of those things. If there was a percentage, what percentage would like soft skills be for hiring?
For me, and I can only really speak for me, I would say maybe 50%. I think if it's a more senior position, someone that has years of experience in things, then they have to really show their excellence in code or whatever specific need I need to fill. But as someone that's willing to learn and as a new position for them, I would say 50% probably.
That's good. So we're teaching hard skills, right? So when we're doing the career workshop stuff, when Sarai is talking about going to meetups and stuff, that's essentially trying to attack those soft skills, right? So I'm just like, since I have your attention, those meetups are super important. It doesn't necessarily have to be a meetup, but just like going places with people and getting used to talking to people, because essentially an interview is making sure that you like them and they like you. So you need to focus on learning your hard skills, but you also need to focus on being around people and communicating with people and being comfortable in new situations, especially since a lot of you are going into new careers. Not all of you. Some of you are going back to like these great places you came from. But they're really important. They're important. I would like to open it up now to you guys. I don't want to talk anymore, and I want you guys to talk. So Blake's open to ask anything. So if you have questions, raise your hand, blurt it out, whatever.
I was going to say, you've got something I can tell.
I just don't want to be the guy that's like. I guess my first question is, so as a hiring manager, you throw out a position,
you get a stack of resumes, 150 resumes. There's two parts, obviously, like the resumes and then the interviews. What are the tells for like the immediate like go no go test for both interviewing and resumes? What immediately throws a resume into the garbage can, and what immediately during an interview do you just dismiss them entirely?
Okay, so we'll talk about the resume part first. So I would even back up just a little bit further. Almost every time I open a position, I ask anyone on the team if they know someone who might be a good fit. So if you know people that are in similar positions or a company you're interested in or something like that, that would definitely be the first place to start, is to hit those people up and talk to them. So that's number one. Number two is when it comes to the resume, and I get a bunch of them. I'm maybe a little different than other people, but I don't immediately toss something in the garbage. I look at all of them and read at all of them. My opinion is that people took quite a bit of time to put that together, and I think it deserves a bit of my attention. Now, I don't normally have 150 to go through. Usually it's closer to 20. But yeah, and then it really depends on the position, right? So if it's a junior type position, then I look to see if they have some of those just basic foundational key points, languages, frameworks, things like that we're looking for, and then usually I try to talk with them on the phone, and the phone is where really I make the go or no go if we're going to bring them in for an actual interview. And that's really where the soft skills come in. I want to talk with someone who's a good communicator. That's very important. I want to talk with someone that can express points well and can handle difficult situations, because oftentimes we're trying to hit, especially right now, we try to hit a lot of really tight deadlines. So there's a lot of stress involved, so I want to make sure that we can handle that. So I know that's not a really solid answer, but I would say this on your resumes: make sure you're putting a lot of stuff in there that's relevant, but don't say you're an expert in something that you're not either, right? So make sure you're filling it full of the things. Hiring managers like myself, I really like to see like a project completed, or a problem solved, and maybe some of the difficulties, and maybe just some high-level language on how that problem got fixed, or your part you played in fixing that problem. If it's a brand new position, you can talk about some of the things, some of the projects and things you've built here. As a brand new position, a lot of people will like to look at if you have an open source project that you're working on, you put on GitHub or something. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it gives them something. That shows them that you know how to use Git, you know how to collaborate, you know how to put something on the internet, you know how to complete a project and get it done. So those are all kind of things I would look at. And then as far as the interviewing process, it really is kind of feeling out if someone's going to be a good fit for the company culture. That's statistically one of the single biggest reasons for, or indicators of longevity for someone you hire. And the hiring process is kind of costly in that it takes time away from projects and things like that. So if we can get someone in the door that's going to stay there for a long time, then that's what we want to do. And kind of a good cultural fit within the organization is a really good indicator of that. And then usually I have some sort of skills test I put out there. I don't tend to make them too difficult, but I tend to make them things that are different than what you've probably done before, so you have to think about it. I know people do tests in person and whiteboard tests. I usually let people take them home, where we do a pair programming session and work on a problem together, because I want to see how we can collaborate. I know not everybody does that, but that's how I like to do it.
So a lot of companies do skills tests.
Mm-hmm.
And they vary. They go from making a to-do list to doing different projects.
Mm-hmm.
Have you experienced any of those in a bigger company? A lot of bigger companies will do that. We've had students in the past that they get really nervous about that part. Should they be overly concerned, or I don't know?
Yeah.
I just want to make everyone feel really easy about this part, because I've had students come back and been like, I have to do this test. They only give me 60 minutes to build this. I don't even know if I can build it.
One thing I can say is most of the time especially for kind of a more entry-level position, they don't care if you don't finish it. They want to see your process. They want to see what you're actually doing and how you're solving a problem you don't know how to solve, right? And what steps you're taking to do that. I wouldn't feel bad if they give you a timed test and you don't finish it. I wouldn't feel like you've failed. I would talk through the problem, especially if they're in the room. I would even ask some questions or say, okay, I think we're going to do this. Maybe write some pseudocode, right? Just type out in sentences using comments of what you would do. And then start making that into actual code and just taking it a chunk at a time. If you don't finish in the 60 minutes, I don't think I'd worry too much about that, because they really want to see how you handle pressure and how you solve, what your process looks like to solve a problem you don't know. That's really what they're looking for.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Did that answer your
Yes.
questions? Was it helpful?
Yeah, no problem.
Guys, I also want to put in too, when I said that those meetups important, you don't have to be the most likable person in the room, right? You don't have to be like super flamboyant and like bubbly and like a salesperson. You just need to show people that who you are as a person, your personality, and that you understand how to communicate. You don't necessarily have to sell yourself. Just like be who you are and just make sure you're being the best version of yourself. I think that's probably pretty important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You had a question?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, so you guys do mostly event technology, so it's okay. So how? I mean, as far as working with events, there's probably the media aspect and the staging and production aspect and everything. Where does the technology kind of mesh with that? And on an average project, what is it generally that you do?
Okay, so as far as my role with Summit, we actually bring in media producers and contractors to do
So you're
all of that.
your cornerstone or your friend.
So what I usually help with is make sure they have network connectivity. If they need it for a presentation, make sure that is up. Make sure their systems can talk to the internet or other systems if needed. We try to keep all of the complexities down as much as we can, because in the middle of an event, if something can go wrong, it will. And it's a lot easier to fix if it's minimal. And so we try to caution people away from relying on an internet-connected PowerPoint or some sort of presentation, right? To have that on a USB drive or something instead.
It kind of goes back to like the least amount of technology is the better.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It's really about finding that balance. And then, yeah, I mean, mostly it's network connectivity for that type of.
So you mostly during an actual event, it's mostly networking and working kind of the IT side of things.
Yeah, and troubleshooting problems and.
Yeah.
Like I alluded to earlier, when we had a cruise ship last year, when we left port, Apple released an iOS update, and we had limited connectivity on the ship. And anybody that had auto updates turned on their phone all started to download this update, and it killed our network for basically 3 days.
Because it was terrible. We had to set up an info desk with like he was technically junior. He was like less than junior, and we're like, you're handling all the customer service problems. Bless his little heart. He's like 20, right? He's on this cruise ship with all of these people, and he's just like, how can I help you? And like, we're at sea.
Yeah.
I can't help you.
And I was on the phone calling the mainland because their network administrators were in Miami. So we're calling them, trying to put in network rules to block the update and different things so that we could actually function. It got so bad that the ship had a hard time doing some of their communications that they needed to do.
They got kind of upset with us. Like, we're trying to call the Bahamas, and like, what are you doing? And we're like, sorry. There's a lot of really like intelligent, like social media loving people on this boat. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah,
It just happened.
it was fun. Not much sleep happened.
Well, there's a lot of stuff before. I almost feel like most of the work for the tech team is before the event. It's building the websites, it's making sure the ticketing system and the shopping's good, it's like the back end stuff. Like
Even populating our event app with data, and we spent a lot of time working on that. And that's what I really dig about technology is there's so many different aspects. Once you have a good foundation in something, that can bleed over into different areas and departments. But I spent a lot of time working with an app development, an event app company to populate our app with data and all that stuff, make sure everything's formatted correctly.
Do you guys outsource your event apps and stuff like that?
The event app, yeah. We're looking into bringing more of that in-house.
Who are you using right now for outsourcing?
We're using one called QuickMobile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a pretty cool shop.
I feel like you're said a lot.
Kind of working in similar industries. It's cool to.
That was cool, yeah.
To hear the things.
Yeah, I evaluated lots of different solutions before we kind of settled on that one, and there's a give and take with everything.
But you are moving towards in-house, and hopefully you're
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah, it's more of a longer play. It's not a huge bottleneck, but there's a lot of things to do. Usually things are prioritized based on what's the biggest bottleneck. So we identify what's holding, the process down. That's our biggest thing. Right now, the app and bringing that in-house is not our biggest bottleneck, but
Yeah. But you see that in the future down the
in
road?
the future we see going on.
100% proprietary things, or is it something you want?
We'll see as things come. I mean, things change quite a bit. There's a lot of new initiatives always coming up that organizationally we want to hop on, and so priorities change. That's one of the reasons why Kanban boards work so well. You take small digestible chunks and you get those through the whole system, and then you move to another small chunk. Because in 2 weeks the priorities might be a little bit different.
That's where project management comes into play, right? Like that role is so important on a team.
Yeah.
Having somebody that's like, I know we said this was important today, but like or last week, but like today it's like something else, and you have to reorganize it. And someone has to like kind of take the helm on that, because you can't be like developing and managing everyone else and listening to the incoming changes. It takes a village, it takes a team.
And even at large companies, the priorities change. Even at my time at America First, we would have priorities change from week to week, even though they were had much slower cadence and pace and to things. Priorities would change oftentimes.
Did you say your work is a lot faster paced than, say, a simple tech company would be working there?
It really kind of depends. Each company, it's really hard to kind of tell, big or small, their pace. But really, that's part of the culture. So, honestly, I think when you kind of get into interviewing, these are types of questions you should ask your interviewer to see if it's a place you really want to be at. I think that's really important. Yeah.
You mentioned Kanban.
Uh-huh.
What is it?
Okay, yeah. It's a methodology of getting projects done. And so basically you break them up into a big project up into smaller chunks. And this can get super sophisticated. There's Scrum, which is a type of Kanban and everything. But really, if you just envision writing a task on a sticky note and you have a column here for backlog of things to do, the middle column is things you're doing right now, and the end column is done. That's all you're doing is you're taking a small task and you're moving it from each of those steps. And you can have more columns, of course. I have a QA testing column, so we'll deploy it on a staging or a test environment and run through some tests and things before we move it to the next step. But that's really what it is. You had a question?
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about what you look for a new person coming in the board, but what do you look for your people who are already there who might want to move up, the mid and sort of senior level people? What are the skills that you really want to see them develop as they're there?
Yeah. That's a really excellent question. And it's something that I've only approached a couple of times. And so I think there'd probably be some more insight from other people that would be helpful as well. But what I can say is that really enthusiasm and working on things until they're done, and communicating really well, because you have several different tiers. They can get more and more. You have junior developer, you have senior developer, then you have lead developer, then like a manager. That's kind of the tier or path people go to. So from junior to senior, that jump is really just an increase in skills. So make sure you're continuing to learn your skills, you're learning your frameworks really well, you're learning best practices, foundational principles. Never stop learning. I oftentimes at night, instead of reading a book, I'll do some coding programs, tests and things. I'm a nerd, but I like it. Moving from senior to lead, you have to have more people skills, more of those soft skills, more things of motivating other people or working through problems or helping someone or mentoring a junior developer, right? And so those are the types of skills you'd need. And then to a manager of the department is basically less code, more project management type stuff.
So when you're at the bottom, it's like worker B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then if you get up, there's less work and there's more talking and organizing and saying yes and saying no. And
yeah. Huh. Yeah. Well, yeah. And there are times where I feel like I don't get to write enough code, and those are the times I go home and I work on something.
Do you write a lot of code in your current position? position?
It changes based on what we're trying to deliver. So right now, the last 2 weeks, I've been writing a ton of code. We're trying to get a bunch of things out right now. But for a month or so before that, I did a lot more project management. We're a pretty versatile shop, have a pretty small team, so I wear multiple hats. In a larger company, those roles are probably a little bit more defined. I personally like working for places where I get to switch things up a little bit more. Yeah.
Are you currently working at Summit Series or for Summit Series?
I guess it depends on your designation. I'm a full-time employee with Summit Series.
Okay, do you live in the community in Ogden Valley or not?
No, I work out of my basement mostly. I work from home.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of, Summit's a really interesting company. We have an office in New York, an office in LA, and then some working spaces in Eden. And so I have spent a lot of my time up in Eden working with people. But depending on the time of year and what events we're throwing, people may not be there, or the people I need to interact with directly, so I'm working from home those times. So yeah, we're spread out a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, some of the developers are in Europe. Some
Yeah.
of them are here. Some
Mhm.
of them are in New York.
Yeah.
Some of them are surfing in Nicaragua.
Which and all of that stuff brings up its own challenges, right? Communication has to be really tight. That's why something like Slack is really vital for our team, larger team, because sometimes phone calls aren't really feasible, but we can do a Slack phone call or a Slack messages and things. Yeah.
You mentioned the mentor relationship with the junior developer. Could you describe that a little bit for someone who's just coming into your company, how that relationship works?
Yeah, so ideally, and I'll admit it doesn't always happen ideally, so we need to be prepared for that, but ideally it would involve some pair programming where we sit down and we work on a problem together. It would involve, I think it's really vital for a junior developer to get some time struggling with something without help, as well as struggling with something with help, right? And so I try to mix those up, and so I try to make sure that I've got a task really clearly defined with all of the requirements, and I give that to them and let them churn on that for a little bit. Then I'll follow up and see how that works. And if they're struggling with something, I tell them to reach out to me, or and then sometimes we'll hop on and do a screen share, or if we're in the physically same place, we'll pair program and work on it. Sometimes we get super busy and that doesn't happen like it should, and I think everybody has really good intentions to do that, but sometimes due to other things that doesn't always happen. That's really what kind of mentorship looks like.
You got a question?
Yeah.
So, as an instructor, one of the most common things that I see when students graduate is that they are completely afraid of being labeled like a boot camp grad, like the imposter syndrome is real. And I was wondering, I always like to ask senior developers, how did you overcome your imposter syndrome?
I haven't.
Or
I haven't. Hits me all the time.
Yeah.
It still hits me.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a friend of mine who's been a software engineer up at Hill Air Force Base for a long time. And he writes insanely complex things. And I asked him if he's, what he thought about imposter syndrome. And he says that he still has it. And I honestly think it's kind of a symptom of just the way things work right now with how we get our information, in that Google only gives us the results that it thinks are most relevant to us. And so we're getting more of the same of what we see. Facebook does the same thing. So we're kind of building our own little echo chambers of things. And so if I'm constantly Googling or searching for how to solve this problem, or Vue.js tutorials or whatever, right? I'm seeing the answers that are bubbling up to the top, and those are the best answers. And what I'm not seeing are the 10,000 other people that are Googling and asking the same question and trying to figure that out as well, right? I'm just seeing what has been upvoted or thumbs up enough to kind of bubble up to the top. And so I think imposter syndrome, at least for me, it hits me all the time. And so what I would say, maybe my advice would be to understand that even the person interviewing you may feel that way from time to time. And to just think, okay, I'm feeling this. I know I have things to learn, but I also know that I'm good at other things. And so I'm just going to be authentic with what I know and what I'm willing to learn. If the interviewer asks me, hey, do you know XYZ framework? It's perfectly acceptable to say I don't, but I'm absolutely willing to learn and would love to dive in on that. And then just dive in. I mean, the thing with boot camps is you really do learn how to learn. I went to a traditional college, and I'd say about 75% of what I learned is not really relevant to what I do now. And boot camps are very focused on what you're doing. And so that's really important. And they're also focused on teaching you how to learn really quickly. Colleges aren't really known for teaching people how to learn really quickly. They're just teaching you their way of doing things. So I wouldn't feel like that at all. I would caution against, that holding you back. That's a great question.
It sounds like there's a lot of pressure. In boot camp, there's a lot of learning and it feels like a lot of pressure. Are there times where you just feel like you're, kind of in the zone in your job? I guess in this.
Yeah, I do. There are a lot of times I feel like I'm in the zone, and I feel like I'm getting a lot of things done. There are some people within my company it's pretty fascinating, but Flo, have you? No, yeah.
Don't
anyway,
talk about it.
I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
No, anyway, there's just some people, and we bring in people to speak on flow, but it's basically kind of a state of mind that top performers get into where it feels kind of instinctual and things like that. And that does happen from time to time. I don't really consider myself a top performer, but there are a lot of times I'm in the code and it's making sense. And then since I work from home, one of my kids will run in and completely distract me, and then it takes me 30 minutes to get back there. So, but it does happen, and that is a point you'll get to, and you'll be surprised when you get there. But yeah, it's
So,
great.
to be clear, flow's great. I thought so. When Blake and I worked together, we tried to use this project management tool.
You're talking about that.
That was supposed to substitute needing an actual project manager or person. And it was terrible. Like, it was awful. Everyone was adding their own things, assigning things to people, and it was, like, very confusing.
Yeah.
Slightly traumatizing.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
That's what I thought you were
that
talking
flow
about.
is,
That was terrible.
get it. My bad.
No, it's okay. But a state of flow is...
A state of flow, yes.
You need that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So what kind of hours would junior developers see as work? Like, 60 hours, 40 hours, 60 hours 3 weeks in a row, and then maybe 40 hours the next week? What kind of work stack would be?
That's entirely up to the company. Lots of companies do it differently. So when I was at America First, it was 40 hours, no more, no less. Every now and then I would put in a little extra hours, but it was maybe once or twice a year, and it was only maybe 5 hours that week or something. It really wasn't a ton. Other companies operate pretty quickly and have really tight deadlines, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So there's this time of year, especially since we're leading up to an event, we're putting in, everyone in the company is putting in a lot more hours. But there's kind of an ebb and flow. And so really that's something I would suggest everyone kind of feels out for yourself and what works for you. The high pressure, really intense things can be fun. They can also be exhausting and mentally draining. And so it really depends on what you want out of it. But definitely ask questions like that. Ask what a typical week is, what a typical day is. When do people typically come in, and when do they normally leave? And what are the expectations? Those are all things you're going to need to know for a position, and it's good to just kind of get them out there in the open during the interview process. You know what they are.
It almost feels like, the more hats you wear at a company, the more hours you might be putting in.
Mm-hmm.
The less hats you wear,
Yeah.
the more 40 hours you wear. So if you're going for a startup, there's startup hours. Like you work until it's done. You work until like maybe it's done and it's broken, and then you try to fix it again, and then it's broken, and then you fix it. So it just depends on your lifestyle too. Like if you like working in like startup and like building something from the ground up and being kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, that might be awesome. If you have other life priorities and 40 hours a week is what you want, you might be working in a bigger company. So it kind of just depends on what you want.
And both are totally acceptable.
And both are great.
There's
like,
no.
Neither one's better than the other one.
Right. Yeah.
How many events do you guys do a year, and what percentage do you think of your work a year is based on those events?
So we do one big flagship event of about 4,000 people,
Right.
4,000 attendees, and that's a really big production with lots of building out spaces and things. And then we do a bunch of smaller events, maybe 15, 20
Yeah, about 15 or 20 for the year.
throughout the year, and those are maybe 100 to 200 people.
And if I ask you the bigger client is, or
What's that?
do you mind if I ask you the bigger client is, or
Bigger client?
who your bigger client is, the going with the 4,000 there?
Oh, our big event? No. Like we put that event on.
No, so Summit Series is an events company.
Oh, it
They
is.
host
They're
their
our
own
events. Yeah,
So
they're
it's Summit event.
Events.
it's our event. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so
There
it's
are
like-
attendees. There are people. They're part of the Summit community.
I didn't know. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they bring in different speakers.
So it's sort of like a TED.
It's like TED Talks. It's like if TED Talks and Vice and a festival had a child,
A sweet baby.
had a really cool baby. That's what it is. And then Blake gets to manage the digital version of that baby. And then there's a huge.
I don't know how to
team
parent
that's
most of the
one.
time though. So
So the big event is, where is that based out of?
this year it's in LA, downtown LA.
So what your work is generally, the project you're working on will work and function for most of those events, or do you individualize each event and that's projects you work on, or how does that go?
So a large portion of what I do is for the big event. The smaller events, we kind of have those dialed in, and they don't need a ton of extra stuff. I maintain some systems that facilitate ticket sales and housing assignments and things like that. But most of the new stuff we're building is for our larger event. The other stuff's mostly automated at this point from my
So
responsibilities.
are you creating stuff from the ground up, or are you just going back in and just like refurbishing things? Like, are you how often are you building things, and how often are you just cleaning up old code?
A good mix of both. So for the last maybe 18 months has been kind of refactoring and cleaning up some old code and building out new features in an old code base. We have built a few web properties from the ground up, completely from scratch. We're mostly a PHP shop, so we're using the Laravel framework for some of those. And then we're starting to replace some aspects of our old system with a from the ground up system as well. But really, I mean, any place your work is going to be some sort of mix of starting something from the ground up and fixing, refactoring existing systems. Yeah, I think you had a question?
Do you ever have events in Ogden Valley that are open to the public, or not just to anybody, but open for people who actually live on the West Side Front?
Yeah, we've done a couple of those. A lot of the events up there right now are kind of corporate retreats, retreat style things. We have a lot of private companies renting out our spaces, and then they put them on.
Booking.
They're booking, and then we do have some people from that go to our large events that come up and do some skiing and things. But they're pretty low key. And I mean, if you go up Powder Mountain on a weekend, you're skiing with people that are there at the event. Usually, I mean, they're kind of hitting the slopes, and then maybe they have a dinner together in the evenings or something, and then some music or a talk or something. But
usually, if there's influential speakers, they usually do a lot of volunteer work with the local charities in the area, the schools, and the colleges. So a lot of them spend their time lecturing at other places before they actually make it up to the event.
right.
For the local community.
And they did do a music series up there this summer. I didn't attend any of that.
Music in the
but
mountains. Is
yeah, they do
beautiful.
music in the mountains, and that's open to everyone. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. Let's do you, then you. You guys raise your hands at exactly the same time.
So you talked a little bit about the importance of sort of having projects to show or having things
Mhm.
that someone could look at. Can you just talk a little bit more about what are the kinds of things you look for, in those projects?
Really, I mean, really what I look for is that the person is the type of person that's out there and they're doing stuff. They're getting things done. That's really mainly what I'm looking at. If it's a senior hire, then I look at the quality of their code. If it's a junior hire, I don't really care quite so much about that. I care that it works and that it's out there and that they're doing things. And it doesn't even really matter if the project is related to what we're working on or not. I mean, it may matter that it's in a language that's relevant to what I need, right? But it could be a Google Chrome extension, it could be whatever, and if it's out there and I can look at it, I can play around with it, that's going to set you apart from most people. Most people, when I interview them, most candidates, I ask them what they've done, and they'll say, well, my team of 15 or 20, we built this. And I have to then ask them, what things did you do there? Whereas if they built something on the side that's on GitHub, or I can download a Google Chrome extension or something, then they can point me to those projects that they've done, and they've actually taken the time to get it out there and get something like that.
So you've worked in tech for quite a while. In all the different companies that you've worked for, what do you think are the most common reasons why there's high turnover in tech for a specific company? Like, what would cause a high turnover for developers?
Boy, I would say part of that would probably have to do with the hiring process. They're probably not picking the right candidates that maybe fit with the company. See, that's tough for me because pretty much every place I've worked, tech was really solid. At America First, I mean, people work there for a really long time and stay there 25, 30 years. They'll stay at America First. With Summit in my area, it's been relatively constant. We've brought in some new people, but we've had the same kind of players the whole time. I would say if a company has high turnover, they should probably look at maybe the way they're managing their projects. Maybe a company should probably look at their structure they have in place to improve or increase people's salaries or skill levels. Every single developer I work with, one large piece of value that they get out of working at a place is they feel like they're learning something and they're improving themselves. And so if someone's working at a place that they don't get an opportunity to try something new or to cross-train with someone else who knows a skill that they don't know, I think people get kind of fidgety and want to leave. The tech types and developer types seem to be people that like to not fidget, but tinker and learn and touch things, new things. And so those are kind of three areas I think I would look at if I were working at a place that had a high turnover rate.
So if you're bored.
Yeah, if you're bored. Yeah.
Would you prefer to see a portfolio or like a solid individual project that just has all this?
Portfolio meaning like some screenshots of stuff you've worked on, like a portfolio website?
Different kinds of projects. Maybe not all of them are great, but would you rather see that or would you rather see something that's, solid, just a wide variety of work?
I don't know. I mean, if it's like a junior position, I don't think I'd care. If it were a senior position, I would want something that's really solid, built really well, follows good practices and things like that.
So what do you suggest for people who are graduated boot camp and they don't have much experience, so they're looking probably for the junior position, to work with projects, to be focused on projects, or be focused on problem solving, but to really, or everything a little bit, because, there's some people who really don't have any experience.
Right.
So they went to school, they graduated, and now they're looking. I mean, for anything, but what do you suggest?
So I would pick something in your time once you're done with boot camp or something and build it and then put it out there. It can be a personal project that is just a free service or a free site that shows your favorite movies and it pulls that data from an API or something like that. And then maybe has a cool interface. It doesn't have to be something necessarily business related, but it just You really want to demonstrate that you're doing things. Also, there are websites, and I can't think of one right now, but you can also volunteer, put some time into open source projects, right? Open source is really great because they'll have a list of tasks that need to get done, and you can fork a repository, put your fix in place, and then create a pull request, and then the maintainers of that project will review your code and offer advice on how to do it a little bit better. And so you'll go back and do it again, and then submit again. So you learn while you're building projects, and then your GitHub history is public. So you can link to your GitHub profile on a resume, and they can see all of the commits and things that you've done. So it may feel a little intimidating to try and come up with a project or to contribute to a project, but I wouldn't hesitate one bit to try to solve any problem on an open source project that you're interested in and submit a pull request. There's no harm in trying. Only positive comes out of that.
Gavin,
Oh.
back.
So when you're interviewing someone, is there like question you find that most people struggle with or they don't answer, like how you would want them to if you wanted to hire them?
I can't think of a particular question, and I'm trying to think of something. My interviews are pretty informal. Most of the time I try to meet at like a coffee shop or something, since I work from home. I don't want to interview people in my house, so we'll meet at a coffee shop or do it over the phone or something. And I try to make them pretty informal. I know some people have very structured questions that they ask, but for me, I can't pinpoint any one question that people really get stumped with. Really, I'm there to ask about your experience and things like that. I don't tend to ask questions that trip people up. I know Google was notorious for asking questions about, manhole covers and what shape they should be or something like that in their interview process. I never found much value in that, but Google did, so it might be something. But really be prepared to talk a lot about your experience and be prepared to say, I'm not entirely sure how to do that, but I know I can find out. I know I can learn that, or I know I can learn that skill, or I know I can figure it out because I just finished learning something really intense, and I know how to learn now.
How much of the interview process is culture fit? And based on that, what can you do to be a better culture fit? Is there anything you practice or learn?
Yeah, so a large part of culture fit, it really depends on the company if culture fit's a big thing. With my current position, I know we work on really, really tight deadlines, and we're working really hard to get things out. So that's a piece of the culture. I want to make sure that person can fit. So I really make sure that the culture, that aspect of this person's culture, this candidate's culture is very important. So I'd say it's maybe, for a junior level position, I would say it's maybe 50% of how I would evaluate that. Different companies are going to be a little bit different in that respect. How can you make sure you're a bit better culture fit? I would say really just learn to kind of roll with the punches. There's always going to be frustrating things about any job you're at, and learn to handle that with a smile, laugh it off, and move on and just focus on getting work or other things done. And then the other thing is to just maybe practice some of the soft skills as far as handshakes, talking with people, introducing yourself, and those types of things go a really long way as far as a culture fit. One thing I recommend people do is to kind of maybe stalk the company's website to see what kind of clothes that they wear. Usually they'll have pictures of their employees or like a company party picture, whatever. And the clothes that they're wearing under those circumstances can kind of give you an indicator of maybe how rigid or how loosey-goosey they are. And you can kind of find that middle ground. At America First, I had to wear a shirt and tie to write code, and dress slacks and dress shoes, and that was my attire. At Summit, I wear sweatpants most of the time because I'm in my basement.
And even so, we're still usually in our laundries,
yeah.
yoga outfits.
Yeah, and I can tell you in the office it wouldn't be uncommon to wear pajama pants at Summit office, right? But at an event, you don't do that.
No, it's good.
No, you look nice. So yeah, and I can't think of anything else maybe, but maybe just kind of study up on how to be personable in the interview process.
Also, guys, I would suggest that you, like, in an interview, you're trying to decide if you like them as much as they like you. So I wouldn't apply for something that you feel like off the bat you wouldn't like. Like, if you think you'll leave within 6 months, it's not a good fit. Like if like, you just shouldn't. Like, if it doesn't feel good, move to the next one. Like, there's a point in your, like, where you just need a job and you don't care. But, like, those few weeks where you really need a job, don't let that define the next 2 years of your life. Because that's when culture fits become a problem and turnover becomes a problem and you get frustrated and you feel like you're unhappy. So take the time right now while you're looking and figure out what kind of companies you want to work with. Do you want to do startups? Do you want to do bigger companies? Like, do you want to wear your pajamas in your basement? Like, do you like going into the office and interacting with people? Like, these are serious questions to ask for. And not just like, do you have the skills, but are you going to enjoy that kind of work?
And I can tell you, as an interviewer, it always looks really good if you're asking those kinds of questions. It makes me feel like, okay, you're thinking about these things and you really want to make sure it's a good fit. So if we come to terms and you end up coming on, I'm pretty confident you're going to stick with the company for a while and really work it out. One thing, I just had another thought about the culture fit. If you want to know my opinion of someone who handles situations under stressful situations, Shelby is the person.
No,
So it's entirely true. We could be completely stressed out of our minds, and she's calm, relaxed, measured, and so just be like Shelby.
Just be me. I'm here for the whole 12 weeks you're here. No, but I mean, I think your demeanor goes a long way, right? Like, if you're like really stressed out and stressing other people out, like, but like if you're like a little bit like, okay, let's work through these problems, and you're a little bit more like pleasant to be around, it gets things done.
Totally, and every problem's solvable. So even if it seems really big, we can fix it, right? So, I know you had a question, but I think someone else had their hand up too. We'll do you and then you, okay?
Just since you said you're working from home, can you talk a little bit about remote jobs? Like, how much of them are out there? Do you have to be a senior developer in order to be in that situation?
Yeah, usually, I would say it's more common for a remote job to happen with a senior developer, just because you have a track record of executing and getting things done. Whereas a junior developer, you don't have that track record. So even though you may be that kind of person, they don't know that you are. And really, if they're going to invest in you, they want to make sure you're investing back in the company. And so I would say that it's probably a little bit harder to find. They do exist. I've been reading articles that the remote work's kind of becoming less and less popular. It was really popular for a while, and it seems to be happening less and less right now.
Unless you're on the Wasatch Front where the airshed sucks.
Yeah, and then you want to escape it.
Yeah,
They should want you to be in your basement in your pajamas.
Yes. Yeah. And as someone, I've spent a lot of time working in an office and working from home, and there's trade-offs to each. There are days I wish we're in an office full of people, and days that I'm glad I'm not. And when I'm in an office, there are days I wish I could just work from home. And so really, I feel like I really fit into the grass is always greener on the other side kind of in that regards with remote work versus working in the office. And so, I don't know. I mean, other people would maybe feel a little differently about that. But, yeah. I hope that answers your question. You and then you, she. Oh, you sure? Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's just counterintuitive that they're not being able to allow technology to facilitate being able to work from anywhere. I mean, Cisco, which has been my client for a number of years, they work from all over the world. And also just my thought is from an environmental perspective, from an air quality perspective, and from whatever's going on with our climate perspective, the ability to be able to work from home, I think I think we have to adapt, is what I'm saying. And some companies have been doing it, and yes, I'd love to be in a team and with my teammates, but I think that that what's going on with our climate and our air is going to impose upon us adaptive means of working together, and certainly technology allows us to do that.
Yeah, I think those are valid points.
Kit, you have a question?
Oh, so it's kind of tacking on to the conversation we've been having about, culture fit. And I was wondering if there were times when you maybe went with someone who didn't quite have all the technical skills it was looking for, but you knew would be like a really good fit. And are there times where you felt like you were really willing to invest in someone who you knew was going to be there long term and sort of willing to put that investment in up front?
Yeah, I would say for me, especially with kind of junior developer, again, I've always kind of erred on the side of kind of a fit within the company and someone I knew would work there. I mean, they're dedicating a lot of their time to work for me and work with the company. We're dedicating time and money to in them, and I really want to make sure that it's a good fit for both people. Even if someone's really skilled, if they have a personality that wouldn't fit really well with the company, that would be hard. Now, there's lots of personalities that do fit. I mean, a company is not like, a roommate or something. You get to go home.
Yeah, it takes all kinds.
And so there's lots of different personalities within the company. But say for America First, I needed someone who could stay on kind of a long project and not get frustrated that it may not seem like it was moving as fast as we wanted it to, because we needed to make some decisions that involved 4 or 5 other large departments that also had other things going on. And so I would look for someone that could kind of just put their head down, get things done, and not get frustrated and fed up that things weren't moving as fast. And someone that would be willing to work to a stopping point and then maybe switch to something else for a time and not let that bother them. And so I'm not necessarily talking, when I say culture fit, I'm not necessarily talking about, that we're all
cool outfits,
Red Sox fans or something like that, right? Like but someone that in the culture of work can kind of fit with the cadence and the flow of work and how tasks come in and how they get moved through the system. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool.
Because I guess culture fitness isn't necessarily like, if you're a Red Sox fan, it's really like, do you have the same, like, are your skills going to work here?
Right.
Because if you want fast, working in America First is like a terrible idea.
Right, it's tough.
It's tough, but if you're expected to deliver things all the time and you're more of like a slow and steady,
yeah,
not good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so I don't want this to drag out too much longer. We have 2 more questions, and then Blake's going to be around for a little bit after to ask more questions. And then we're also going to share, he's been really kind and said that he would share his email with all of us, so I'll share that so you guys can ask any questions that you have that maybe you've been thinking about, or as you're approaching the job searching, or anything. You said anything.
Bring it on.
Okay. So 2 more questions if we have them, and then AJ?
So we mentioned that we're learning React, so I want to know what's another attractive language to learn that kind of covers the spread, I guess.
So it really depends. Utah tends to, and it really depends on where in Utah. Utah tends to be a little bit more PHP focused than other aspects. I've got a relative who's a technical recruiter out of Texas, and in Texas it's almost all Java. You need to know Java, but Utah's much less Java, more PHP, more Ruby. Node JS, which is JavaScript, is getting really popular in Utah County. And so those are all things I'd spend some time with. Really though, maybe just make sure you have a good understanding of maybe code architecture or those types of coding patterns. You have the most popular one that I've worked with is called MVC, Model View Controller, which is different than how React does things. But a lot of server-side languages use MVC architecture. So maybe read up on how that works, because then you can pick any language you hop into, whether it's Ruby or Ruby on Rails or PHP or something else, you have an understanding of how to interact with the database and how to structure your code so that it's portable and it's modular and you don't have to repeat your code quite a bit and things like that. And those will carry over into whatever language you know.
Anyone want to be the last person to ask a question? Closing question?
What database do you use? Do you use relational or non-relational?
I'm almost exclusively relational databases, a mix of Oracle and MySQL. But I have been dabbling with Postgres. Is that how you say that? Postgres? Yeah, a little bit. And then I played around with CouchDB, which is a NoSQL database, for a little bit. But I actually haven't had a business use case where I needed a NoSQL database or where I would have seen huge benefits from that. Just the types of projects that I've worked on, I haven't had to go down that road. And so I've kind of stuck with relational. But that being said, it does bring up kind of an interesting concept that I talked with Shelby about once is there's so many things out there to learn. I've kind of subscribed to a just-in-time learning model, meaning when I need to learn something, that's when I'm going to start learning it. Because there's so many things out there that it can feel kind of intimidating to try and learn them all. And so when I do come up to a point where I do need to know NoSQL, whether it's Mongo or CouchDB or Cassandra or whatever, I'll learn that.
Cross that bridge
I'll
when we get there.
figure it out.
Yeah, right, because you can, if you have foundations, they're called foundations for a reason.
Right.
Everything else is on the other side of the bridge. So you'll build that bridge when you need it.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, guys, thanks so much for your patience. Yeah, you can go get your dinner. I know this is during dinner time. You can keep asking questions. You guys can eat all of these cookies. Or whatever you want. Oh, and move around if the lights come back on. We were like, no, there we go. So good. Shelby.
I'm just pretty sure it was which is a perfect
Right.